Shalom, covenant keepers and children of Israel. You're listening to Awaken to Torah Ministries, where spirit and truth converge. We are a listener-supported ministry and ask that you prayerfully consider supporting this work. This ministry is focused on revealing the message of Torah as taught by our Jewish Messiah, Yeshua. Your donation will be used to further a ministry devoted to exposing the lies that we have inherited from our forefathers, as Jeremiah 16:19 clearly declares. You can contact us at 77690 South 4680 Road, Stillwell, Oklahoma 74960, or join our mailing list at awakentotorah@gmail.com. We look forward to meeting you when we once again are sheltered by a cloud by day and a fire by night on our way to Jerusalem. Shalom Aleichem, and we'll see you there. All right, Shabbat Shalom, and welcome to the Tents of Israel. I'm your host, James Gillespie. I don't know if you can see these guys in here with me, David Hooven, and let's see if we can pull him over here on camera, get his face in here. Mr. Chris Jones, we're all in the office tonight, so they're fading in and out of my green screen there, so they can comment whenever they want. Let me get on here and pull Mr. Ryan Knoll in with us though. We're kind of getting a late start here, as we always do, especially when we have guests in the house that
invite this invite both me and Ryan, and I
okay.
pull my camera.
So you're going to pull your camera on. Okay.
Squeeze.
Okay. So as always, we're live. So realize we're just going to do things the way we do things. So yeah, we'll get rolling here in a minute. So the first part of the show here is normally us always trying to get set up, but we got a late start kicking in here, so I'm trying to ring Chris and Ryan right now. Even though Chris is here in the room, he's going to use off his phone as well. Okay, so he's on. Okay, there he popped on the screen. Ryan should pop on here in a second. Let me jump up here. I can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's Samsung with Kent. Nope, that's not it. Let's try that. Nope, that's not it. There we go. Skype call. All right. So now, David, you can pull up here and jump on this camera if you want to, and that'll put us all three on the camera there. I had a topic that I was thinking about talking about up until about an hour before the show started, and we got talking about other things, and I just thought to myself, well, let's just let it go wherever it wants to go. Of course, we've been on some crazy conspiracy theory stuff here lately, and me and Chris was sitting around the table talking about flat Earth, round Earth, what all that looks like, and then talking about the accuser of the brethren. So we talked about that a little bit, and then blessed are those when they despitefully use you and say all manner of evil against you. Talk about that a little bit. So we'll just have an open source dialogue here tonight. How about we do that? And that way we just really allow the Father to direct it however He wants to. And maybe we try to get out of here by 9:15 instead of 10:30 or 11 like normal. I've tried to cut it down to an hour, but it seems like every time we try to cut it down to an hour, it seems to go long. Yeah, come on in. We're in the office, so I imagine somebody's trying to bring me a cup of coffee.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the coffee. Because I'm tired, and Chris drove all the way in from Texas today, so he's tired.
I'm just old.
David's just old. We were first. Never mind. I was going to, but I had to restrain myself. I don't want to be an accuser of the brother.
But when the brother leaves the door open like that.
Yeah. Yes.
And can Ryan hear us pretty good on your?
Ryan, can you hear us pretty good?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, you sound good as well.
Okay.
So I just,
I wouldn't know.
I put out this little thing on Facebook this week because a lot of times people think that if you don't speak up about something, you don't have an opinion on it. And I've learned some things over the years. I've learned one, that I'm probably not as smart as the next guy. So I need to keep my mouth shut more than I keep it open. Even though, on this type of a forum, it seems like that's all I'm doing is running it. But, but in general, I try to listen a whole lot more than I speak. And I don't want people to know any more about me than I have to allow them to know. Because I believe that you keep your close friends close, and the rest of the people, you keep them at arm's length. Because most people are in your atmosphere because either one, they're trying to get to know you and become one of those close people. You'll know when they do. Or number two, they're just hanging around to find if they can get some dirt on you so they can end up trying to destroy you later with it, because for whatever perceived reason, you have something that they think they want. And you may not even have that thing, but they perceive you have that thing. So they're trying to get it. And there's nothing to get. So I don't understand that a lot. So I've kind of over the years kind of withdrawn a little bit. Chris and Ryan and Steve and David, they probably know more about me at this point in my life than anybody does. Because I open up to them a little bit more than everybody else. When you get a little bit older, the book of Proverbs starts taking a whole new meaning to you. And you start realizing that maybe old King Solomon knew what he was talking about there, about keeping your mouth shut and listening a little bit. And,
We read that a lot.
yeah, not letting everybody know what you're going through. But anyways, I made this little post on Facebook this week and kind of stirred up a little controversy.
Say it isn't so.
Because say it's not so, James. Say it's not so. But I normally don't talk about flat Earth or round Earth or any of that kind of stuff, just because it's so divisive. And if you're a round earther, the flat earthers are after you. And if you're a flat earther, the round earthers are after you. I think I said that twice, didn't I?
Makes sense to me.
I don't know.
I do what you mean.
I hope it made sense to you.
Makes sense to me.
If it didn't make sense to
Yeah.
you, okay. Somebody's after you, no matter which position you take, is what I'm trying to say there. So normally I wouldn't say anything about it, but I had some people this week, kind of messaging me and telling me, if you don't take a stand, then you're just supporting something else. And Chris and Ryan and David have all heard me make this statement probably 100 times. I'm not a round earther, and I'm not a flat earther. I'm an I don't care earther.
Yeah.
Because I really am an I don't care earther. Because seriously, I'm just telling you, to me, whether the earth is round or flat, it doesn't determine one thing about my salvation. It has zero bearing on my salvation. So why would I spend a bunch of time on that? But that doesn't mean I don't have an opinion. That doesn't mean that I don't have facts to support my opinion. At this point, I kind of expressed in that little thread there, I think that I'm at the place that I think that whatever it is that we live on is surrounded by a chrysalis, kind of like a caterpillar when it's going into its cocoon, becoming a butterfly. And I don't know if it's a ball inside of a ball or if it's a flat plate inside of a ball. But I know that when oxygen rises to a certain point, it gets super cooled and it makes this almost glass. It's not even like ice, but it is ice, but it's glass because it's super cool. I think they said when it hits the atmosphere, it's like 350 degrees below Celsius there. So it literally freezes the oxygen. So then you have this transference of H2O, which is hydrogen and oxygen, rising, and it bounces off of the nitrogen, the super cooled nitrogen, which is now this basically glass ball that we live in. I know it kind of sounds hokey, but maybe like a snow globe almost that surrounds us. And maybe there's several of them. Maybe there's several different layers of them as they go out. We don't know how big this earth is, I don't believe. What we do know is modern science has lied to us. That's the one thing that I think that all three of us can agree on, whether we're a round earther, a flat earther, or an I don't know earther. I think all three of those positions have to admit that modern science has lied to us about the planet that we live on. And I believe they're doing it knowing. I don't think it's a underhanded, behind our back type thing. I think it's intentional. But there again, one of the reasons I don't speak about it very much is because I like to know the why, and I don't know why they're lying to us. So I had to say, the why is beyond my pay grade. I mean, I don't know what benefit it would be to them to lie to us about whether the earth is flat or round, or whether there's. I do think that if there's more land outside our land, that would be a reason to lie to us. Okay. Because they don't want us exploring that, because we're explorers. I mean, look at Magellan, look at Columbus, look at, Amerigo Vespucci. All of these guys were explorers. So maybe they don't want
ancient maps that were drawn.
Yeah. Well, I heard this guy speaking. Maybe y'all can chime in on this, but I heard this guy speaking about that, and he's like, well, if you look at pilots don't use our fake maps, because if you look at just a regular world map, even a flat one, I used to make the joke, if I'm looking at a map, the earth is flat. If I'm looking at a globe, the earth is round. So used to be the joke. I can prove both. I've seen a globe and I've seen a map. But this guy's making the point that they distort the images on the map, and you can, from one map to the next, the image is distorted depending on who's putting the map out. The land masses are almost completely different in some instances. So why would map companies be distorting these maps? But every pilot goes off of the same map, and it's the map that all of the flat earthers claim to believe in. So, because it's that line of sight map, that straight map, and the flight patterns, and he's making this case about all of that. So why would we be going off of this map and not off of that map? And then I heard a guy make another point, or it might have been the same guy, but he made the point that, the sun is here and the earth is here. And the earth is supposed to be spinning 27,000 miles an hour, or I think that's what it is, in outer space, rotating around the sun one time a year, one circuit around the sun every year. But the problem with that is 6 months into that cycle, we should be on this side of the sun. Well, if you're on this side facing the sun, that means it's daylight, so you can't see the stars where the sun's at. Okay? But this side of the earth would see the stars, so the only stars you could see would be on that side of the earth, not on this side because the sun would be so bright you couldn't see the stars on that side of the earth. Well, how come 6 months later, when you're on this side of the sun, do you still see these stars? Those stars don't ever change.
Yeah, it seems like a rational argument.
So it's pretty convincing argument that we've been lied to about something, because that doesn't make sense. And I know that people started pointing that out and showing that the heliocentric model could not be. Just because of the star patterns. And that's why they developed this new, I don't know if y'all have seen this new semi-heliocentric pattern, where the sun's flying through outer space at billions of miles an hour, and the Earth and the other planets are basically caught in its in its corona like a comet, and they're just spinning behind the sun. So the sun's spinning, proceeding through outer space like this, and all the other planets are rotating in and out of the corona.
And the stars as well.
I guess I'm not sure how the stars play into that, but it was enough to mess people up for a little while that they threw them off that. Well, how come we're seeing the same stars when we're supposedly on this side of the sun that we're seeing when we're on this side of the sun? Is the sky rotating, or is the stars rotating with us?
Yeah.
I mean,
well, it seems like the author of Confusion may have his hand in the mix somewhere.
Maybe just a tad. Like a couple weeks ago when we were talking about the mud flood and Tartaria and all of that kind of stuff, and how we've been lied to about all of that stuff for years. And why did they continue to lie to it when we know it's happening? You can go get a book called I think it's 1830 World's Fair or whatever that is, Chicago. Looking at just Chicago and San Francisco at those buildings, and when people started confronting them, well, why did we tear down these buildings? I mean, these buildings are made out of marble and stone. Why did we tear these things down? They're beautiful works of art. And they give us some fake story lie that, oh, those weren't real marble, they were paper mache. But yet we have evidence of trucks hauling all that marble out of there. So we brought in huge dump trucks to haul out paper mache? I don't think so. There's just so much of that kind of stuff that is compelling evidence against the narrative that we've been fed. And that's what Jeremiah 16:19 tells us. It says that in the last days that we would have inherited lies and vanity and things wherein there is no profit. So I made the statement, I think a couple months ago, that we live on a slave planet. And whenever you own a piece of land, you don't own a piece of land. The government still owns that piece of land. If you don't believe me, don't pay your taxes on it for a couple of years and see how fast the sheriff's department shows up to throw you off the land that you paid for. I mean, it's just what's going to happen. You don't own yourself. You are literally a slave. If you don't believe me, don't pay your taxes. See how fast they throw you in prison. I mean, if you don't think you're a slave, something's wrong in your head. Me and my son did it a few years ago before he left the house. I was trying to explain to him about taxes and that type of stuff. And I was like, well, for a single man living on his own, before you ever see your paycheck, the government has already taken their money. They don't even give you the opportunity to pay them what you owe them. They take that out of your check before you ever get it. Okay. So they're going to take 30% for a single guy just straight off the top. And let's say that that's all they take. You don't owe them any more money at the end of the year. Well, that's 30% taxes. Well, tithes is only 10%. So the government's already requiring more than God if you just paid the 30%. But then I started explaining to him, well, if you own a car, well, you have to pay taxes on that. So first time you tag that car, you have to pay sales tax, and then every year you have to pay a usage tax. So every year you have to re-tag that car, pay the tax on that car to keep it up to date. And if you don't keep it up to date, you can't have tags on it. You let that car sit in your driveway for 6 months without tags on it, the state can actually get a tow truck to come and haul it off of your property because tags have been out of date, for so long, and they'll haul it to. So do you own that car? You don't own the car, because if they can come and take it, if you don't pay the taxes on it, you don't really own it. So then,
if they impound it, it sits in the impound yard, you got to pay the impound fees and all that stuff.
Well, we make these contracts with the state, and we don't even realize that we're making them, and it's sickening when you really start realizing how much of a slave you are. But anyways, we figured up all the taxes, from sales taxes, vehicle tax, property tax, food tax, all of that stuff. And for a single guy, they were taking over almost 63% of your paycheck. before you ever got to spend a dime. So that before you got to pay rent, buy a video game, anything, 63% of it was gone. If you just were compliant on your taxes. So, but that's not it. If you have a child, you get a certificate of live birth. That's what you should get, but you don't get that anymore. You get a birth certificate. So a birth certificate, the government takes that and they exchange that on a world exchange because they figure if you're born, you're going to make $1 million in your life and you're going to pay X amount of taxes off of that. So you're no more than cattle. So this is the revenue that you're going to generate throughout your life. So they sell your birth certificate on a world stock exchange. That's how they get, they use you as collateral. So it's like you going to the bank and using your house as collateral to borrow money from the bank. They're using citizenry, human beings, to go to the World Bank and borrow money on us.
And that's nothing more than human trafficking.
It is 100% human trafficking. They go to the Federal Reserve, they borrow money for the use of the government against the people who live in their country and the taxes that we pay. Okay, so you're literally a slave. And then if you get married, you go, and because they've convinced us that we have to go to this judge and get a document to say we're married. And whether a preacher signs it or a judge signs it, you still have to go back and file it with the court after the preacher or the judge signs it. And then the court becomes the executor of your marriage. And they're in control of your marriage, whether you believe it or not. Because go try to dissolve that marriage, get a divorce. I guarantee you it will be the state that tells the man what he gets to take, what the woman, what she gets to take. Not only that, any assets that were gained during that marriage, like children, the state will tell you who those children go with and who they stay with. So who's in control of your marriage? You or the state?
Here's to be the state.
It's the state. So
don't get licensed.
when we start living in this prison planet and you really start pulling back the veil, it'll make you sick to your stomach about how much we have been lied to and how much we have inherited that are lies and vanity and things wherein there is no profit. I can't profit from my marriage. I can't profit from my land. I can't profit from my business. I can't profit from anything because I don't own any of it because the state owns me. And you think it's just America, but it's not. It's actually worse in other countries, maybe better in some of these third world countries, but not much because then you have to live under the tyrannical rule of a third world country where in a first world country, you're a slave with the illusion that you're free.
You got a little bit longer.
Yeah, yeah. They ensure you have a little bit longer life to be a slave a little bit longer. Yeah. It's craziness. So what do you got to say on that, Ryan and Chris, David?
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, going back to the flat Earth, round Earth. I mean, I think we're right in the middle of this great awakening process, and you can't get hung up on that because there's so many other things, just like you're talking about. There's so many other things that we've been lied to, and you just can't die on that hill because there's so many other things that we're going to be shown and revealed to us that are just going to be devastating. And the reason why I think they do it is just because of money and power and being able to manipulate us. If the Earth is flat, that means if we didn't go to space, there is a firmament. We can't bust through the firmament. So everything that NASA did, they took all that money, billions and trillions of dollars over the last 50 years.
Where did they go?
And it was just a cash cow, is what it was, and it was under, they were showing us, the progress we thought they were making, but all they were doing was stealing from us.
Well, you speaking about the moon landing and all that kind of stuff. But what was the guy's name, the head of the NASA during that time? I forget his name, but he was actually came to us from World War II with some German scientists, and like 2 or 3 years before he died, he got cancer. And the lady that stayed with him, I wish I could remember his name, but anyways, the lady that stayed with him wrote a book, and she was actually did news interview after news interview, and during that time of his life when he was dying, he found religion, found God, and he started telling the truth about all of that kind of stuff. And she tells all of that. But what I found most prevalent about what she was telling was the end time stuff, because basically, since he's died, everything that he said has come to pass. That there would start all these world wars and all this kind of stuff. But then when the Earth's crust started cracking up and all of that was going to happen, and they couldn't keep it a secret anymore that the poles were going to shift and their new religion, global warming, was going to be exposed, that they were the last big push that they would do was an alien invasion. So now we see this thing, happening there in Florida a few weeks ago. And I mean, it's just been all this alien leakage over the last three years, that they're priming us for this alien invasion. And if this guy is correct, that's kind of going to be their last big push, where they absolutely seize full control over humanity. One world government. We're all going to come together and fight these bad aliens and all this kind of stuff. It's craziness. But go ahead, Ryan.
I've been kind of reflecting this week. I mean, the more I watched a video, and it was talking about, people who they go down these rabbit holes, and all of us, obviously. I mean, you go down these rabbit holes, you learn these truths, and then you've got to deal with reality. You've got to learn. You've got to pick yourself when you get to the bottom of that rabbit hole, and then you've got to pick yourself up and deal with reality, what's going on right now. And I think that's, something we need to talk about a little bit, because it's affecting a lot of people. I mean, for myself, it's affecting me, because, you just get depressed because you think, well, basically I'm living in a world that is
a made up one.
A made up one. I mean, they basically just lied to us our whole lives. Now, how do I rebound? And of course, I mean, the answer is through Yahweh, because I mean, He's got to give you the strength and the willpower to get through that. But it's an issue. There's folks that in this community that are really struggling right now, because these truths and some of these things that we thought were real aren't, and that messes with your psyche, and it messes with your mind and your heart and your compassion towards people, and then you build you build resentment towards your government and your officials, and you don't know who is what, whether they're wearing a mask or they're not, or they're good guys or bad guys. I mean, It's just a crazy time right now.
Well, the crazy thing about it is, especially if you go down the whole Q rabbit hole, that's a whole nother rabbit hole. One day the bad guy on the Q rabbit hole is Joe. 5 weeks later, Joe's the best guy there ever was in the rabbit hole. I mean, so that's the misinformation campaign, and that's what I tried to explain to people, when all of this stuff really started happening, that I don't know what is happening in the background, but I know something's happening. There's something going on in the background, but I believe that it's so far above our pay grades that and so micromanaged, controlled by the governments or not even the governments, the elites of this world. Because I believe the governments of this world are just puppets of the elites of this world. Okay, so those misinformation campaigns is, it's a military strategy. Well, the first time when we went into Iraq, we dropped leaflets. I mean, after I think 20, might have been 28 days of bombing them. I mean, we just came in and decimated them, with airstrikes for like 21 days or something. They never saw a soldier. They just saw bombs being dropped on their heads. And then we started flying planes over, dropping leaflets out that Saddam had surrendered. Well, we had cut their communications. We had cut their travel. We had blown up all their bridges so they couldn't get back. I mean, we had isolated them, so they had no other recourse but to believe the leaflets that we were dropping. So that's why the majority of those Iraqis didn't even fight. They just came up over the hills with their white flags and surrendered to us because that's what the leaflets told them to do. So, I mean, not realizing that maybe in another part of Iraq, the Iraqi guard was still fighting with every fiber in them,
They believe the lie.
They believed the lie. And that's the thing, these misinformation campaigns that, even our own military has been involved in, the propaganda machine that the news media has become. I tell people, if you believe anything on mainstream media, you're an idiot. I mean, if you don't know that is government-controlled propaganda, we can't even have a conversation. I mean, because you're so far behind on the curve, there's no reason for us to even talk, because you're just going to think I'm a crazy lunatic conspiracy theorist guy that don't have anything in his head. But
Never mind the little man behind the screen.
yeah, forget about the guy behind the screen. That guy doesn't exist. But when we're all sitting around just having conversations, I don't agree with Chris on everything he says. Chris don't agree with me on everything I say. The same with Brian, the same with David. I mean, we're all grown men trying to figure this thing out the best we can. And Ryan will say something and I'll go, ooh, I never thought about it that way. I need to investigate that. Or Chris will say something, I never thought about it that way. Let me investigate that. And that's what Scripture tells us to do, is iron sharpening iron. So all we're trying to do is weed through the lies. Because when you, like Ryan just said, when you start really realizing that the majority of the things that you have held your whole life to be truth is a lie. And it's not even a lie. It's a lie that is a lie, but you have convinced yourself to not see it as a lie. And the only reason you can no longer live in that delusion is because there's guys like Chris, Ryan, and James that are openly speaking about it, and you know what we're saying is the truth. So now you can no longer live in that lie. So we've pulled your self-induced delusion away from you, and now who are you going to be mad at? Me.
James Gillespie.
That's
everybody. Direct your anger.
That's why I brought Chris and Brian on, so they can share the load.
Yeah. But it still seems to all come back on you, James.
Yeah, I know.
That's why I'm in the background.
So when we really start looking at all of this stuff, and we start looking at Scripture and prophecy and how everything's going to play out in the last days, I really believe that we're living close to that time. And another conversation we were kind of having around the table. I'm not trying to scare everybody, but
there's some scary stuff happening.
There's some scary stuff happening. And if we are going through a pole shift right now, I mean, like a legitimate one, I'm not talking about, because our pole is always shifting. Most people don't realize that. But scientifically, what we call the North Pole is always moving a little bit. The problem is when we have these big jumps in that move, then that can change weather patterns and create earthquakes and tsunamis and all that kind of stuff. And if everybody's been watching since the first of the year, we've had tsunami after tsunami, we've had earthquake after earthquake, volcanoes erupting, tornadoes in the wintertime, thunders. We just had a thunderstorm here in Oklahoma.
Right before a snowstorm.
Right before while the snowstorm was going on, it was snow coming down. I'm like, what in the world? I mean, I've lived in Oklahoma half of my adult or almost all my adult life. And
I saw a snow.
I've never seen that before.
On the Weather Channel, a snownado on a ski resort.
A snow-nado on a
Snownado.
yeah. Well, I mean, there are those weather patterns where there's snow-nados and there's lightning storms and snowstorms.
Yeah,
We've just never had one in Oklahoma.
Yeah, right.
I've heard of them.
That's the crazy thing. So when we start seeing these weird weather patterns, and of course the government, they're pounding us daily with their it's global warming. Well, that's a pretty good mask. If I say, hey, it's global warming and the Earth is liquefying underneath you, well, that must be global warming causing that.
Yeah.
But when you have other spots freezing, they don't normally freeze.
That's the crazy thing. So one place is super heating and the other place is super freezing.
Yeah. There's a problem with your theory.
Yeah, it's something's rotten in the state of Denmark, as the old philosopher would say. I'm not a scientist. I'm an old rabbi. That's all I am. An old rabbi, not even a good one, just the old one. Okay, so not a scientist, but I know how to read and I know how to research. And when you start really doing the work, and that's all I'm asking anybody to do. Anybody that ever listens to this show, whether you're listening to it live tonight or you're listening to it, a month down the road, 10 months down the road, all I'm asking you to do is go back and do the research for yourself on the things that we're talking about tonight.
Look it up on Google. It'll show up.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. I had this weird conspiracy theory made up in my own mind today. And today I've decided that they introduced AI into the world because a cache of all this information about the previous world has been found. So they allowed AI to enter into the public domain to confuse us and make us think half of what we're seeing is all AI generated when it could be real.
You might be on something.
I don't know.
I agree with that.
Some new layer of chaos.
That's what I'm saying. I'm just building more layers. I can't get out from under the layers I already piled on myself. Now I'm building another one.
Another layer.
Are we even really here?
Yeah.
I mean,
So then we just got to strip off all the technology and go back to just to be still and abide in
that's what I'm looking for.
in the Most High and see what really is real, because that's going to reveal the truth right there when all the noise of the world.
I think I sent you and
noise.
Ryan because I honestly, if I'm not doing some kind of construction work, I'm dangerous. Because I'm sitting on a computer researching stuff that I have no business researching with my conspiracy theory mind.
It's no longer a rabbit hole; it's become a black hole. You're just sucked in, never to return.
Exactly right.
Those are even real.
So, and I don't normally talk about those kind of things because if you share that kind of stuff with people publicly, oh, he's just a conspiracy theory,
Yeah.
and then they start discounting everything you say. Because you were wrong on this thing. Well, you realize he said there were purple dinosaurs, in the 1990s. Well, there was one named Barney, but
Yeah, there's one of those.
but somebody could take that and switch it around and make it. Well, you look how off he is. So now they use that one little thing that I may be off on a little bit to discount everything I say. And I don't want to ever negate what God is genuinely revealing to me because I've went down some rabbit hole conspiracy theory. And I mean, even with this, all these things we're talking about tonight, it could be garbage. I mean, it could just be a distraction. I mean, maybe we're so comfortable in America that we're just distracting ourselves with things that have no significance. I don't believe that that's the case. But it could be. I mean,
I'm comfortable in a conspiracy.
Yeah, I mean, we have nothing better to do because we're so fat and lazy and well taken care of that
We
we
don't have
just
to
sit
go
around and
really
study
work for
conspiracy
food. We
theories.
don't have to kill the ground. We don't
Yeah.
have to, we just kind of got a lot
We've
of time
learned
on our
everything
hands.
already, so.
Yeah, we don't have to do it. I mean, know how to read, write, do math. What else you need to learn? So, I mean, which is another conspiracy theory. I mean, where does it end? You know, with the election that's coming up here pretty quick, and this is, I mean, off the conspiracy theory stuff. I know a lot of people don't vote, never have voted, and they have their own reasons for that. And whatever that is, I have a difference of opinion, and I think it's all right for them to have their opinion. So if it's all right for them to have their opinion, it should be all right for me to have mine too, right? Or is that wrong?
Yeah, no, it's all right. It's okay for you to be wrong.
Well, that's well. So
Somebody's got to agree.
my opinion is if you can see what's going on in the world today and not see that the forces of evil have aligned themselves against Donald Trump. I mean, literally, every concept or every person that I would perceive to be promoting evil, abortion, slavery, race baiting, demagoguery, pedophilia, all of those people are vehemently against Donald Trump. Okay. Now, I don't care if Donald Trump said he's going to grab some woman by the cooch. I may have said something like that in my younger days luckily nobody probably got on tape. I hope I didn't say anything like that.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to put it past me, out hanging out with my buddies, having some locker room talk.
Yeah, who didn't talk like that?
Okay. So I'm not trying to justify him saying that. So that's not what I'm saying. I'm not trying to justify that because I don't think we order sexualize women in that way. But at the same time, I'm not going to hold that against him when it's 50 years later. I mean, if you held my 20s against me, I wouldn't be sitting here talking tonight. Couldn't get two people to listen to me. But
Get a rope.
yeah, get a rope real fast and make it tight. But when you start seeing what we perceive as evil aligning themselves in such a way against him, I mean, I think 90 some, you know how many indictments? 90 some indictments, Brian?
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like 92 or 94 indictments in four cases or 5 cases. So he's been indicted 4 times on 94 counts, right? Does that sound right? Okay. So, and it's all for stupid stuff. I mean, just Records Act. I mean, you're going to try to throw him in prison for the same thing. Bush, Obama, Joe Biden, who didn't.
The current president.
Yeah, Joe Biden, who didn't even have presidential immunity. He was a vice president. He wasn't even a vice president when he did it. He was a congressman when he was, or a senator when he was doing it, taking classified documents, and they were found at Penn State. So you're going to say it's all right for Joe Biden to do that, but the current president of the United States can't have classified information? That don't make sense. Okay. And then you're going to try to put him in jail in an election year for that? That doesn't make sense. So when we start seeing all of this evil aligned against him, I'm trying to motivate you. If you're one of those guys who don't vote, who has never voted, if you can look at that and not say, well, maybe I need to vote for this guy this time. Maybe the only time you ever vote in your whole life. But if you can sit back and watch this country throw that man in jail or make it possible for him to not be on a state ballot or something like that, I honestly, I get it. I hear it all the time. A vote for the lesser of 2 evils is still a vote for evil. Well, not voting for the more good is a vote for the evil as well. So I mean, if you say, oh, this guy's super evil, but he wants to, and this is my line, okay? This guy's super evil, but he doesn't want unborn babies to be killed in the mother's womb. And this guy's super evil, and he does want unborn babies to be killed in his mother's womb. Well, if I knew nothing else about those two people, I'm going to get up in November and I'm going to make my way to a polling station and I'm going to vote for this guy. Because at least this guy doesn't want the innocent murdered when this guy does. That's the way I have to gauge it. So if you're going to be on God's side for one thing, what was the guy's name? Cyrus? King Cyrus? And he wasn't a righteous king in any way. You know, in fact, if you look at scripture, it kind of looks like he was probably an evil king. But he did right by Israel, so God blessed him.
And he was talked about beforehand.
And he was talked about beforehand.
Yeah.
So
By Yahweh.
So and Yahweh says that he is the one that puts him in government. He's the one that removes him from government. So if that's the case, why do we still have people out there today saying, well, I'm not going to vote?
We're going to stand in opposition to Yahweh. By not voting.
I'm just trying to motivate those people. Chris and David might not vote. I don't know.
I voted. It didn't do much good, but I voted.
I have before.
I don't know. I've never asked them. You know, I mean, it's not something that I normally ask. But
I voted once. Wait, twice now.
Oh yeah. I think I've voted in every government election. I don't normally vote in state and local elections, which I probably should, because that's probably the only elections that matter. But
I never felt there was
Local
important
levels.
I'm still living the lie.
Yeah.
I'm still living the lie that my vote matters.
Yeah.
And it may not matter. I mean, it very well may not matter, and it may be futile. But that old soldier in me just will not let me go down without a fight. It will not let me go down without a fight. And when I see this country, which I love, I see, slogans like defund the police. I mean, how dumb do you got to be to defund the police? I mean,
retrain the police.
No, how do you convince people that that's a good idea?
You don't convince the ones that need them, that's for sure.
I heard, I think it was Senator Kennedy. He said, okay, all you people that are out there screaming defund the police, next time you need the police at 3 o'clock in the morning, call a local drug dealer.
Exactly.
Call your mama.
Yeah, I mean, seriously. I mean, let's cut military funding. Well, here's the thing. I'm not sitting here advocating saying every war that America has fought has been a righteous. That's not what I'm saying. But if America wasn't the superpower that it has been in the world for the last 100 and some years, I doubt this world would be in existence right now. I mean, just think of what would happen if we'd have lost in World War I. And even worse in World War II.
Yeah.
I mean, absolutely genocidal, homicidal maniac in control of the world. So that patriotic button.
Boy, that's how you brighten me on.
It is. I'm telling you, they know how to push it. Being married to a Filipino, I'm starting to become a Filipino patriot as well, because I start watching some documentaries and seeing what's going on in the governments of those countries, and you start forming an opinion. And I'm sure if you're living in China, you think China's the greatest country in the world, or Russia, either one. I'm going to tell you, the Russians of today if it wasn't communism, I would be living in Russia. Those are my kind of guys. I mean, just
Manly men.
tough, hard, man's man.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what. I mean, if you're a fairy boy wanting to cut your genitals off, let's just go ahead and smoke you, kill you, put you out the pasture. That's Russia.
Pretty much.
So, I know we're 10 minutes out, but it's probably the wrong conversation to start this time. But
Here we go.
25 reasons why we should be.
yeah.
Because their voice is deeper and they're men.
No, I can't, and this is one rabbit trail that I don't explore, because just the few little delves into it that I've done, it gets me so heated. I can see how people become homicidal maniacs. I mean, and it's the advocating for children to get their genitals removed. You gonna, because a little boy wants to play with dolls, you're going to cut his ding dong off? I mean,
Or you're going to chemically do it and you're reversing.
yeah, or chemically, physically.
Because these young boys are unable completely to ever come back to a place
No,
where they can
100%.
have children or any kind of sexual relation
And all of
in a normal
Becoming
context.
What?
man, really.
what gets me is this. The statistic is there's 0.003 transvestite in the whole population. It's not even 1%.
You mean hermaphrodite?
No, hermaphrodite's way less than that.
Oh, I thought you were talking actually transvestite.
Transvestite.
Oh, it's that. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry.
3% of the
I'm sorry,
population.
hermaphrodite was
They
zero.
claim 3% of the population is gay,
Okay.
or one of those,
But transgender.
one of the letters in the alphabet
Yeah.
that they all, I don't know,
Yeah.
LGBTQTSYZ,
Yeah.
no D.
Yeah.
I don't know whatever all of that lettering is there. Okay, and here's the thing: I have nothing against the homosexual, lesbian, nothing. I don't have a thing against them. To me, that sin is no greater than somebody telling a lie. It's a sin. All sin's going to send us to hell. Okay, so, but when we start giving adopted children to gay couples, and because that adopted boy now wants to play with dolls, and that gay couple says it's all right to play with dolls, and they feminize this young child to make that child feel more comfortable in their femininity than their masculinity. And then because that child feels more like a girl than a boy when they're 10 years old, they want to go to a doctor and get him surgically changed or chemically changed for the rest of his life. Those people need to be shot in the head.
I can't disagree with that. Sounds like an executable.
Well, this is what's happening to these kids. And I've seen this statistic of these transvestites who have had the surgery. It's like a 70% of them have instant regret about what it's done to their body, about what it's done to their chemical makeup, and they wish they could reverse it 100 times. And I think the other 30% are just lying. I think they've dug their heels in.
Well, that was instant regret. The other ones come out later.
Yeah. I mean,
If they aren't end up dead because it's pretty high suicide rate.
it's actually, other than comedians and dentists, I think comedians are first and dentists are second for suicide, or used to be.
I don't know now, but
Yeah,
I've heard that before.
I used to keep up on the statistics, but they're way up there, way up there.
Yeah, I know from my interactions with anybody in that LGBTQ identification community, over 90-something%.
How do you say it? LGBTQ?
Yeah, well, I mean, you can go LGBTQA. I mean, I don't know. It goes.
Yeah.
There's a lot of.
Okay.
I don't know. There's a bunch of them. I don't even. I just say LGBTQ because everybody knows that.
I said I'm old. I just say
So,
gay.
We just say the homosexual.
Yeah,
community.
homosexual community.
Anybody that's participating, whether
Yeah.
it be girls or boys,
Yeah.
you know, their proclivity to having suicidal ideations.
And I'm not
is
trying to
just-
diminish whatever they.
Well, no, I
they
mean
think
they've
they
got
are.
some
I just
serious.
don't know.
You know, it comes from a lot of serious background trauma, usually abuse that's happened to
Mental
them.
illness.
And we're, you know, it's some sort. It's a spiritual issue within their household or bloodlines, it appears. But they are suicidal. I mean, they absolutely they don't like who they are. They don't like really anybody in their atmosphere, and they're really just troubled individuals.
Well, let's talk about that. All of us are dads, okay? All of us. And every one of us has boys. Okay, so if my son, either one of them came up to me and said, Dad, I'm gay. Do you think that that's going to make me stop loving that kid for 1 minute?
No.
Now I'm probably going to be disappointed because I'm not going to get the traditional, you know, granddad and all that kind of stuff if he's legitimately gay. Okay, so I'm probably not going to get all that traditional stuff. All my hopes and dreams are going to be dashed. That has nothing to do with the way I love that boy. I'm going to love that boy the same way I loved him before he told me that. It's not going to change my relationship with him in any way other than in that way.
He's living in sin.
He's living in sin. But
And the desires for it are one thing. I mean, it's still a sinful desire. It's the act of it that now becomes the sin
there you
itself.
go.
I mean, if a man desires a woman who is not his wife sexually and allows his mind to continue down those trails, I mean, and not act upon it,
Isn't
mean,
that what Yeshua said?
it's temptation.
He
I mean,
said-
so you got to flee from the temptation.
He said a man that lusts after a woman in his heart
There you go.
has done the same as committed adultery.
Yeah.
So an adulterer is an adulterer. Homosexual is a homosexual. Both of them are sins unto death.
Yeah.
I tell people all the time, you know, because I hear all these Christians just bashing gay people all the time. Like, fags go to hell, and you know, just all this crazy vitriol stuff. And they're sitting there eating a ham sandwich. I'm like, well, the Bible calls that an abomination, and he
Same
calls
word.
eating that ham sandwich an abomination.
Same word.
Exact same sin.
That's it.
God doesn't look at them any differently, but you're going to tell that person they're going to hell while you're doing the same thing. They're both an abomination. It's the old saying, you're going to judge somebody for sinning differently than you. And that's the one thing I never want to be. I never want to be sitting in judgment over somebody. That's the thing. I don't care if it's homosexuality, transgenderism, any of that. But there are sins that are unto death. And when you violate a child, an innocent, I mean, that's the ones that God really cares about. When it wasn't God that got the stakes in his eyes. She staked him.
Oh,
She staked him out. Is what I
yeah.
story
Yeah.
I tell.
And after women ring her, they know her name.
Yeah, they know her name right away. But, huh?
Helen? Who is it? Am I thinking that?
I can't remember. Anyways,
Sorry.
okay, so the Bible, his blood didn't cry out from the earth because he was evil.
Yeah, he needed it.
Okay, so you never seen an evil person's blood cry out from the earth, but when Abel was killed, Yahweh was paying attention because Abel's blood cried out from the earth, and that's what the Father tells us throughout Scripture. That is the innocent blood. If you defile a virgin of Israel, it defiles the land, the whole land. So that land cries out to God, and that sin will be recompensed by God. So this murdering of our unborn, abortion, and this degenderification of our youth. I mean, we got teenage kids now, and they'll say, you know, if you're not transgender, homosexual, or have a mental disorder, you can't function in society today.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's
You're the weirdo.
you're the weirdo.
Yeah, you don't have
I mean, if you don't
weirdo.
have a mental disorder, you're not transgender or homosexual, you're the weirdo now. That just.
I think you just debunked global warming now.
How'd I do that?
Well, the scripture says the land gets polluted by sin, not the fumes from our diesel trucks.
No.
So,
Yeah.
there we go, Al Gore. It's all over.
Al Gore
God
just got
stands
refuted by Yahweh.
Totally.
Put the cows back out to pasture.
Put the cows back out there to eat more beef.
See,
I'm down. Fire up the barbecue.
talking about this whole, conspiracy theory stuff. I mean, I truly believe, and I don't think it's a conspiracy theory. I think that we're in this phase of transitioning to a higher consciousness. However that happens, heard people describe it as timelines converging, as universes colliding, as dimensions crossing each other. I've heard all of the different explanations for it both. But there's something spiritual going on right now that this higher consciousness is trying to take over. And a lot of us are feeling that pull to go to that higher consciousness. And it's normally believers that when I'm talking to them, like, yeah, I've been feeling more connected.
And I think though on the opposite side of the spectrum, our generations these days are really seeking that higher consciousness, but they're doing it in an illegal manner. Through whether it be drug use, pagan type meditations,
100%.
or these occult type practices. But it is. I don't think it's just to us believers.
No,
it's just that people of this generation, especially, are seeking it in a means that is considered illegal.
They're trying to get to. Well, that's all knowledge. I mean, I was reading that scripture today. Actually, it says that if any man lack knowledge, let him ask of God, who gives it to every man liberally.
That's right.
Not to every believer.
Doesn't say every righteous.
Every man.
He said that he gives it to every man liberally. I think it's so as he asks, or something along those lines. So this spiritual awareness, this consciousness, this going into a higher dimension. I don't even know how we describe it other than using the world's terms. I used to really hate the term empath, but really when you feel somebody else's pain, when you feel somebody else's hurt, I don't know if there's another word for that than being empathic.
Well, empathy. Empathic.
Yeah, empathic. So I hate using some of their words because it almost seems like you're dealing in witchcraft and sorcery, but maybe they stole them words from us.
Well, I mean, yeah, I think so. And I boiled it down to this: that there's just two kingdoms, and that's God's kingdom.
There's only God's kingdom and the
kingdom of
enemy's
witchcraft.
kingdom.
I mean, if we look at Egypt when Moses went in, what were done? Signs and wonders by both sides, identical signs and wonders. But one drew from a wicked source, illegally gotten power. The other was mandated and commanded and humbled before the Most High to able to have these powers work through them. So one's not stolen, and one is sanctioned, and one is unsanctioned.
Well, that's kind of where I was going to wrap this whole thing up is on those lines that we go down these rabbit holes, and these rabbit holes are interesting, compelling, and it almost can become a sick desire to have information that everybody else doesn't have. Because information in this day and age is power.
Always has been.
So absolutely.
From the beginning.
Did I tell y'all about the werewolves and the villagers? Have we ever talked about that before?
I don't think so.
Okay, so there's this game called Werewolves and Villagers. And basically, you can have 100 people. We need 5 people, 100 people. But you need 2 people, and you pass out cards to everybody, and the cards will either say villager or werewolf on them. But only 2 cards out of there, which nobody knows, only 2 cards are werewolves. Okay? So there could be 100 villagers and 2 werewolves. And the scenario works out every time that the werewolves kill almost every one of the villagers, and 96% of the time down to the final 2 villagers. Because the way the game works is every night when the lights, nobody knows who the werewolves are because they look like villagers in the daylight. So the lights go off. When the lights come back on, the moderator says, okay, this person and this person were killed by werewolves in the middle of the night, and those villagers are removed. Well, now it's left up to the villagers to try to decide who the werewolves are. And if they pick somebody who's not a werewolf, that means they're like the Salem witch burnings, they killing them. So now the villagers are killing villagers because they normally never guess the werewolves. Because the werewolves are pretending like, no, I'm on your side, I'm on your side. So they normally never guess the werewolves. And this is a psychology test that's done in psychology classes all the time. That the only people who have information are the 2 werewolves. It's only the 2 werewolves that know that they're the werewolves.
Okay.
And nobody else knows that they're the werewolves.
Until the last 2.
So they eat each other like eating their young. I mean, not only are the werewolves killing them, they're killing each other at the same time. Because they're in such fear of not killing the werewolves. So this is the same scenario we go through today when we're seeking this knowledge. And just like you said about Egypt, one was drawing from a source. It's a real source.
I think it's from the most high source, but it's illegally God.
Well, we talked about it last week at
source of
Shabbat service. God created light and darkness. So this whole, we call it a Chinese symbol, yin and yang symbol, is actually an ancient symbol of God. I mean, it was because he is light and darkness. And out of darkness came evil. Okay? Evil is not darkness, separated. Koshek and evil are 2 different things. But when we think of evil, we think of evil as equating to what? To darkness. And when we think of light, who do we equate light with? God. But God created both. He created light and darkness. So that power that they're drawing from, it's a real power. It's just forbidden power for us because we're tapping into that power with self-will when we should be trying to tap into that same power through God. So if we're seeking power the right way through God, then that power is coming legitimately. In fact, when Moses throws down his rod, it turns into a snake. What does the Egyptians do? They throw down 2 rods and 2 snakes come out.
It doesn't say how many.
Yeah, I mean, but it consumed. But I mean, of course, we know Yahweh consumed them. So his magic was better than their magic every time.
Yeah.
I mean, they were just playing catch up
Until they finally gave up.
Yeah. I mean, there were some things that they just could not do.
This is the hand of God. Yeah.
And that's what happens when we start seeking after forbidden knowledge. Because I believe that there is knowledge that is forbidden to us as the children of Elohim.
Sure. I think that was pretty evident in the garden.
100%. So that knowledge that knowledge that we're seeking that is forbidden knowledge,
We better be careful.
we have to be careful. I mean, there are some deep, deep truths that are in Scripture, and people like myself who study that stuff and can lay it out for you like sandwich bread buttered. We have to be very careful about what we present, because that knowledge in the wrong hands can do bad things. So,
And you're accountable.
and we become accountable.
That means don't tell everybody everything.
Exactly. That's the point. Sometimes forbidden knowledge. It's like the little article I wrote tonight, and we'll close with this, to men. You have 7 a.m. men, you have 6 p.m. men, and you have 3 a.m. men. And most people don't know what those are. So the 7 a.m. man, he's the one that if you give him enough notice, I need somebody to help me get this barbecue grill out of the back of my truck tomorrow. You think you could swing by sometime and help me? Oh, well, I can't do it tomorrow, but I can do it Thursday. Okay. So he's that guy. He's the guy that'll help you, but he's going to help you on his own terms, in his own time. He's not going to be inconvenienced by you, but he'll help you. That's a 7 a.m. guy. And then you have the 6 p.m. guy. This is the guy that he's going to help you no matter what. I mean, as long as he gets to eat and he gets to go to bed on time, he's going to help you. As long as it's not really inconvenience. He's just that good, solid guy. You have a flat tire, he's going to come and help change it. You know, that type of stuff. He's that solid guy. Then you have that 3 a.m. guy. The one that, you call at 3 a.m., he sees your number on the phone. He's not even asking questions. He's just getting up, putting his pants on because he knows you're not calling him at 3 o'clock in the morning unless there's something desperately wrong. And immediately he's thinking, where's my shovel? Where's my AR-15? My 45 and my ammo and my camo
and passport.
Passport because we may have to leave the country after we go back bury this body. That's your 3 a.m. guy. Okay, so we all want to be that 3 a.m. guy, but like we were talking, you can't allow everybody. You can't be a 3 a.m. guy to everybody in your life. And you have to know who are the 3 a.m. guys in your life, okay? Because if you allow too much of who you are to be known, people are just going to use that to destroy you. Eventually. Because eventually you're going to say something that's going to strike somebody the wrong way. So I can't keep my big mouth shut, it seems like. It just opens up and people, boom. And I'm just trying to help. I don't know that in the last 10 years I've ever said anything with the intent of hurting somebody. It's never. Says, how do we Mahala said, how do we recognize the rabbit holes are becoming a distraction from the Father? Or our obsession with them are affecting our witness or even deterring others from coming into Torah. I think you're exactly right, Mahala. And I think that's what we need to be very aware of. And I think that's why we're having this conversation tonight. It's good for us to sit around and talk about these things and explore these things. But when we start trying to hold each other accountable over rabbit holes, I think we're going too far down. I don't know that
people's salvation over rabbit holes.
Well, that's the crazy thing. Flat Earth versus round Earth. I personally believe that I can prove either through Scripture. If I'm just using Scripture, I think I can prove it either way, depending on what side I want to lend more weight to. Okay. You can normally tell. I'm talking to someone. It's like I used to tell this story all the time because 2010 there was like this big explosion in the Christian church, and people started leaving the Christian church, coming into Messianic Judaism like rats from a sinking ship. And I would say, well, in a 10-minute conversation, I can tell you what denomination they come from, and I could. I would, if not the exact denomination, one that's really similar to the denomination that they came out
I
of.
can tell you the address of the
Probably the address of the church they came from.
Tell you the prophets will let you know.
Yeah. So, because I was familiar with them, and that's what happens. Like with Flat Earth, Round Earth, we'll just use that, or Sacred Name, or any of these things that we have held up to be these idols.
I think the Sacred Name would be a real big one.
Yeah,
it's a huge place of contention.
We're making idols out of this stuff. It really is.
If we leave with our brother Judah, we don't even say it. So it's like, man, now we're condemning them.
Well, now we're not only are we condemning them, we're being an offense to them.
I know.
So we're sitting here pronouncing the name in front of our brother Judah when it is an offensive thing to them to be pronouncing the name in public. So, but we're going to make that such an idol that if you say Yahuwah and I say Yahweh, well, you're going to hell, because if you're not like me,
That's Yahweh.
yeah, you don't know his names. You just calling out on the name of false gods. Flat Earth, Round Earth. I've seen fellowships break up over that. How are we going to break fellowship over that nonsense? Those are the rabbit holes I believe that Miss Mahay was talking about. That we get so trapped in these rabbit holes that they are literally distracting us away from the Father. Now there are some salvation issues. I mean, the Bible says, "With such a one, don't even eat." So
That's it.
if you eat with them people after He tells you not to eat with them, then you're sinning in doing so. Okay.
Agreed.
So yeah, you have to break fellowship in those instances, but we can turn anything. It's like in the U.S. government, we say you can indict a ham sandwich. You can turn anything into a salvation issue, and that's what the Messianic movement has grown to be known for. Is turning everything into a salvation issue.
They just want to build man-made doctrines.
Exactly. They're trying to build another denomination is what they're trying to do. When the whole point of us coming out of that system of worship, coming out of the Christian church, was that we didn't want a religion. We just wanted to follow the Bible. Whatever the Bible said, that's what we wanted
True and
to do.
undefiled religion is a good thing, right? We were going to be out defiled religion, but now we're bringing it in defiling another.
I don't even like the word religion. I want to kick the word religion out of our vocabulary.
Well, it's like
But you're right. True and undefiled religion is perfect. But name me a religion that is true and undefiled.
well, it's like I was
Come
telling you
debate
earlier.
Hillel tomorrow. And
Yeah, come debate it all tomorrow. That's a perfect.
I mean, you'll see. You'll see what we're talking about.
So
we
there's a
start
lot
at
of-
3-ish.
There's a lot of talk online right now about this particular thing, about these divisions happening in these congregations, especially, I guess, over there in Arkansas right now. There's a bunch of groups that are
those poor Arkansas people.
they're like splitting and splitting and splitting because people,
It's not just Arkansas.
they're splitting over
It's-
hairs.
Yeah, it's not.
And
That's
I'm
not.
just saying this particular
Like
group that is,
beard
is talking about it. Yeah, there's
I'm
not enough of them, compared to some
They
other
got
people.
those baby face people
Hey.
over there. That's their problem.
Y'all shut up about my weird beard.
No, you got a beard. That's the whole thing. Though. We just don't want them girly faced men,
I know one congregation in particular, and they've been around for a while. They've been around as long as I've been around. But this group of people have split, I want to say at least 6 times that I know of.
Now, are they growing and then dividing, or are they actually
No, they're
splitting over
splitting.
controversy?
They're
Because,
splitting
growing
over-
and dividing.
Growing and dividing is what we're supposed to do. Okay, we're supposed to make disciples and send them
Yeah,
out
we're
into
supposed
the
to-
world.
yeah,
That's our
supposed to
job
be, yeah.
as believers. But this growing up and dividing over controversy and hate and vitriol, where you can't even get together at a feast day and worship together because they're just an evil person.
Yeah.
I don't understand it. I don't understand how we get there.
People are getting sick on it, about it. From what
Well,
I
they
can
are.
see, the talk that I'm seeing online, they're getting disgusted with it, but it's still happening. So how do we stop it?
The problem is that there's only genuinely about 10% of the Messianic belief is genuine, and that's the truth. The rest of them came in because, oh, I can drink. Oh, I'm not going to go to hell if I say a cuss word. Oh, these people live like hippies. They get together out in the woods for 10 days at a time, hang out and have music and alcohol, and
Half of them smoke.
half of them smoking weed.
Agreed.
So it begins to look more like the world, and they're like, okay, well, that's the kind of church I can get behind. So they're not coming to Torah. They're coming to this kumbaya 60s hippie peace, love, and happiness
Jesus
scenario.
Revolution.
Yeah.
And if we have to accept Torah as part of that, we'll say we're Torah observant. But then when Torah is really applied, they're out.
Because that's not what you get at Bait Hillel tomorrow, guys. So don't come if that's what you're expecting.
Yeah. We're not smoking dope. We're not getting drunk. We're not using profanity. That's not true Messianic Judaism. True Messianic Judaism is a call to holiness and separating ourselves from the world. Okay, a complete walk into Torah. Now,
That's not saying we're perfect, but we are striving for it.
well, with
We've
that
gotta
said,
move on to perfection.
If-
Leave the elementary matters behind.
if Chris had problems with profanity, and he was struggling with it, and every once in a while he let profanity slide out of his mouth. It ain't my job to set in judgment over Chris, because I don't believe profanity is a sin, especially a sin unto death, but it's something that's a behavior that needs to be corrected.
Right.
So me as the shepherd, I would come alongside Chris, not in judgment of Chris. I would come alongside Chris and go, hey, that conversation you were having today was kind of a little rough, wasn't it? And just giving him that gentle nudge to clean up his conversation. We don't see that happen in the Messianic Judaism, because at first we were so small we couldn't afford to lose anybody, so we just let them do whatever they wanted to do, as long as they were on our side and weren't fighting against us. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. That's kind of the way that we looked at it at first. But now we've been inundated with the enemy of my enemy. And
Just was left
just
unchecked
the enemy,
too long.
period.
yeah, it was left
Just leave it at the end.
Yeah, it was left unchecked for too long. And now we have all of this hatred. That's the one thing that bothers me the worst. I mean, I could deal with the smoking weed. I mean, any true believer is going to look at that and go, that's not God.
Yeah. They'll move away from it.
That's honestly the way
Ryan's out.
Yeah, Ryan said I'm out of here. No, he'll be back in a minute. But anyways,
That's not fair. I did that too.
any true believer is going to look at the dope smoker and the absolute profane conversation, that lewd conversation where all they can talk about is sex or it's profanity or something. Most believers are going to look at that and go, that's not God. And they're going to gravitate away from those types of people. Okay. That's Yahweh doing the dividing. And that's what he said. Yahweh said, let the wheat and the tares grow together, and he'll separate them in the end. So I don't want to be trying to rip up the tares, but at the same time, if that tare is choking out my wheat, I'm going to pull some of them up. just to thin the herd a little bit. And that's, I believe that's all right. That's all right to do. So sometimes the split isn't bad. It's a good thing.
Yeah.
Well, I know me personally, I was being choked out for a minute there, and I had to personally pull some tears.
Yeah.
Because, I was getting caught up in all of that for a while.
So you mean like people in your life that weren't
Yeah.
necessarily? Yeah, and I mean that's one thing we got to recognize. I mean, are the people in our lives edifying? I mean, are they moving us closer to the Father? Are they pulling us away? And I mean, that's going to be the responsibility of every individual believer to go ahead and. There's people who's going to have to go.
I even had to pull some tears out
Yeah.
myself.
Don't you think it goes back to that old saying, though? You have the family that you're born with, and then you have the family that you choose. Okay. I would much rather hang out with the family that I choose than the family I was born with. 'Cause I had no say in what family I was born in. And some of the people, I might not even like them very much. I love them because they're my family. And I'll always be there for them because they're my family.
Yeah.
But then there's that family I chose. And those people, I think that's where Yeshua was talking about no greater love than a brother to lay down his life for my brother.
That's right.
I laid down my life for either one of you two. I know that.
Because that's the way it's supposed to be when we truly come into this faith and when we come into this knowledge.
You too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a special thing. I'm trying to. I don't really do a lot of plugs, but I'm gonna plug Fish Sabbath. The whole thing that we're doing at Fish Sabbath, building that community environment, and I said community environment, not commune environment, where we're not living with each other and everybody sucking off the same cow's tits. We're not doing that. We're all living in our own houses, being a community, and trying. Well, I mean, that's what happens. I mean, a lot of these people. They want that 60s hippie, peace, love, and share everything mentality, and
It's a golden calf.
it is. It's a golden calf. It's socialism. It's communism. That's really what they're gravitating towards. But honestly, if you look at the Bible and you look at the way God set up His kingdom, it kind of is a socialist society.
As long as he's the king.
But He has to be the king.
He has to be
It's
the king.
never going to work when a man is the king.
No, he's got
That's the problem. But yeah, this whole thing, how do we stop it? How do we stop? And I'm sure that you have Pentecostals sitting around talking about other Pentecostals and going, well, how do we not be associated with them? Because I don't kiss snakes and flop around on the floor like a fish. Okay, so I don't want to be associated with them Pentecostals. I mean, I'm sure they're having those conversations. Or Baptists, I don't want to be associated with those Baptists. Those Baptists drink. We don't drink, I mean,
certainly happens in the USDA church.
That's why there's two Baptist conventions.
yeah. Well, I'm just saying I'm sure these same conversations are happening within these other denominations as well. And I heard a young man the other day ask a preacher a question. The question went something like, if you were a Buddhist, you would be sitting here telling me that Buddha was God and that it was the only religion in the world and the most right religion in the world if you were a Buddhist. If you were Islamic, you would be sitting here telling me the same thing about Muhammad. If you were Hindu, you would be sitting here telling me the same thing about Krishna. I mean, he goes down the line of these religions. He said, but now, because you're a Christian, you're sitting here telling me about Jesus. So how do I know that the religion that you're telling me is the best religion in the world today is? Because every other minister of their religion would be telling me the same thing. The simple answer to all of that is, I can't. The only thing that can reveal to you that I am right is God. So if you pray to my God and he answers your prayer, then he's right. Pray to Buddha, see if he answers your prayer.
That's a good proof right there. That's a good proof.
Pray to Krishna and see if he answers your prayer.
And he may answer your prayer and you're just heading down to your further delusion because that's...
And it may be where the Father's sending you. He said he raised some for destruction. So, that may just be your destruction. But I believe, I have to believe that if you are Israel, if you're part of this chosen people, that the Father is going to beckon you, and you're going to hear that call, and you're going to know that he is your God. It's just the way I have to believe.
Yeah.
And I have to believe that these rabbit holes that we talk about sometimes, they're really cool to talk about, especially online. Talk about, because we're supposed to be in the tents of Israel, sitting here discussing all the craziness going on in the world. That's some of the craziness that's going on in the world, the political and all these, what
in our face.
What if
going on?
Our whole history was rewritten 150 years ago, 200 years ago?
I think to a degree it was.
Man, if you start looking at all of the orphan trains and orphanages and all of that
I
kind
didn't want to start on the
Oh my
thing.
goodness.
I went down the orphan rabbit hole.
if you go down the orphan rabbit
I've
hole
already
and
been-
start figuring out
I've
that they
been-
brainwashed the whole world
I've been waiting.
by
I don't even go there.
by flip-flopping our children all over the world. They sent children that were here over to another country. They sent children that were there over to this country, and then had them all educated by the church. So whatever it was the church was teaching. So now the only history that those children know and carry forth is the history that the church taught them. So now we just realize, our history literally could have been rewritten within the last 300 years. And we would have no way of knowing it. Zero way of knowing it.
It all started with Shazam.
Well, how many of us, America's what, 274 years old, 74 years old this year? 1976. It was 75 last year. No, 73. So 273 years old this year. Two more years of 275 years old. Okay. I think I'm right. If I'm not right, somebody's gonna blast me online.
Yeah,
You idiot! You said you loved America. You don't even know how old it is. I mean, that's probably what happened. What a patriot you are! You were supposed to be a soldier, and you don't know how old I am. No, turned 47 years. So yeah,
Okay.
it's going to be 250 years old.
Okay,
We were talking about 776, right?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, 1776. Yeah. Anyways, if you figure we're 250 years old, so you figure that our history has been rewritten in those 250 years. Because if you go back to the 1800s, like I was saying, and look at those books of the world's fairs in the 1800s, these megalithic structures that were in the United States, why did we tear them down? I mean, these are cathedrals like the cathedrals you see in Rome and Copenhagen and places around the world that are these great draws and attractions, for I go to another country, I'm a
Tourist.
tourist. So this tourism draw. Why did we tear these buildings down? I mean, Chicago had the world's largest. You get on Ferris wheel. Largest Ferris wheel in the whole world was built for the Chicago Fair. How come we tore that down, but we still have the Empire State Building? I mean, we still have Paris, the Eiffel Tower. How come they still have Big Ben? How come they still have the big Ferris wheel there in London? I mean, it's just not making sense. I mean, I'm just telling you. And those are rabbit holes that can take our minds off of things, but they always should point us back to Scripture. Because if we've been lied to about this, then we've been lied to about everything. We've been lied to about Scripture, and I think that that's what starts us down that rabbit hole.
Well, maybe that's the deception that all this stuff will come out to show you that you didn't know what was going on. So now these scriptures that you're reading, which I don't think are defiled, they're going to come back and say, well, that was all a lie as well.
Well,
here's the truth.
Just open confession. I'm a King James boy. I was raised in the Pentecostal church. My grandparents were Jews who migrated here in, I guess, the 1700s, 1800s, enveloped themselves in the Christian church, because of anti-Semitism. So they just raised us as Pentecostals because that was the closest thing to Judaism. At least the Pentecostals believed you still had to keep the law.
Yeah.
So,
or at least some of it, right?
Yeah, some of it anyways. You still eat a pig, but you better keep the rest of it. Don't lie, cheat, and steal.
Yeah,
you eat that pig though.
Yeah.
No, that's the way.
No, you're not. That's true.
But anyways, I'm gonna get myself in so much trouble.
Yeah.
I can't keep my mouth shut sometimes. But when we start thinking about that, do we know anybody from the whole world? We say, well, my family came over when? And where's the real record of that? Where's the history of that? Where's the true personage of that? 250 years later, we should be able to trace our great grandfather. We should be able to do that. How come we can't? I mean, we rely on things like Family Tree and the Mormons up in Salt Lake City to tell us what our family tree is.
Mormon. I
Yeah.
don't know about that. I'll look at that later.
Mormons are good at it.
Mormons and Seventh Day
I
Adventists.
didn't know they'd tell you what your family tree was.
Everybody. They supposedly have a genealogical record on everybody in the world.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, big time.
So,
No, that's
That's my family.
that's one of their big deals about genealogy. So how come we're relying on them to dictate our genealogy and our migration past and all that kind of stuff? It seems to me like they might have been in on it. Because if you can get religion in on a
The
government
Jews were
plan,
really good at it at one time.
and you make religion and government the same thing, you can really control the people. If you got religion and government as the same thing, that's how you control the people. And that may be the greatest lie that we've been living on. The greatest
They own
deception.
Bank of America, so who knows?
Ryan, we've been running our mouth here in the office. What do you got to say?
Should we go down these rabbit holes or should we not? I guess that's kind of the question. But after COVID, to me, researching and studying and going down these holes, you know, might save your life and save some other people's life. So,
100%.
in my opinion, we were forced to do it.
Well, I think that you're right. I think that living in this day and time, I think the Father is bird dogging some of us in these rabbit holes.
Yeah, maybe not for everybody, right?
Yeah, it may not be for everybody.
I mean, there's
And-
certain things some people shouldn't go down that hole yet.
100%. 100%. But people who are pretty stable in the faith, I mean,
If you're not stable, don't do it.
well, here's the thing. Here's the thing. We'll still call it the potion of death, so we don't get banned
Oh yeah, that
on
potion of
YouTube.
death.
So
Yeah,
if it wasn't for rabbit holes, I and maybe some other people in this room would have been convinced that we probably needed to take the potion of death.
I've been anti-potion of death for 20 years. I wouldn't.
So well, I mean, but we went down a rabbit hole 20 years ago.
Yeah, well, I guess that is true. Yeah, we
Yeah.
did go down a rabbit hole. 20
So
years ago.
so we
Down 10 years ago.
we went down that rabbit hole 20 years ago. But if we never went down that rabbit hole and we just thought that potions of death were normal and that's what we needed to do to save humanity,
Yeah, I guess
we'd have been in line with everybody else.
good point.
So some rabbit holes are good to go down, but let's say go back and revisit that though. Now, some people took the potion of death in our faith, and some people didn't take the potion of death in our faith. And now we have the people who didn't take the potion of death standing in judgment over the people who did take the potion of death. And some of them even saying the potion of death was the mark of the beast. And now you're cut off. You can't even go to heaven anymore. So now they've made the potion of death a salvation issue.
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah, just, man, I think hey, just might make those people that didn't.
That's what happened to me, Ryan. I just started shaking my head. I don't know how it happens, but that's some people go down those rabbit holes and they're not meant to go down those rabbit holes because it messes them up. But people who are pretty stable in the faith, even us who are stable in the faith, we have to be very mindful about how it's affecting our mood, how it's affecting our frequency, how it's affecting our consciousness, our walk with God, all of those things. Because
Other people watching.
yeah, because if it's diverting us away from God, where our focus isn't there, and our focus is on Tartaria or on mudslides, and we're not researching those things to gain more clarity about God's kingdom. We're researching them to pump ourselves up with knowledge or whatever. I think we're doing it for the wrong thing, and I think that's what Scripture's talking about when we're seeking forbidden knowledge. That knowledge is not bad. Forbidden knowledge is absolutely bad. So there are things. Some people who know me and know me intimately, I'll talk about DNA, and I'll talk about DNA in such a deep way that it'll blow people's minds. I don't talk about that stuff publicly. When we talk about DNA at Bethel, we shut the cameras off because some of that stuff is too deep for a normal person. They'll take that stuff and they'll revamp it, just like the Order of Melchizedek. I taught that message almost 30 years ago. And people got a hold of that message and they perverted that message, and now they've turned it into something that it never was. And that's the same thing that they would do with that. So I've become more mature in my later life and realized that I'm not building my kingdom, I'm building my Father's kingdom. Some information has only been, it's like in the military. Generals don't go talk to privates. They don't share their generals don't share their battle plans with privates. So we're going to have to realize that. We're going to have to, as a body, start implementing that more, that we keep that information within our own communities. So, this crazy talk, talking about, rabbit holes and, trust me, I know the men that we're sitting here talking to, we haven't scratched a rabbit hole tonight. If we really wanted to talk about real rabbit holes, we haven't really scratched a rabbit hole tonight compared to some of the rabbit holes we went down. but because there's some deep ones. There's some really deep ones that you can get lost in. And we don't want to point people to those rabbit holes. What we want to point you to is that you've been lied to. And the main thing you've been lied to is about the God that you worship. So understand that, and understand that your frequency needs to start getting back into his frequency, because we're created in his image. Okay. His image is a frequency. And the more our frequency aligns to his frequency, the more we become like him. So if we can,
power we have over
the more power we have over the enemy, because now we're not seeking after that forbidden knowledge, we're seeking after that higher knowledge. And the greatest power, I'll tell you as a soldier, the greatest power a person can have is a sword. But the greatest power a person with a sword can have is to keep it sheathed. Does that make sense to you? So I taught martial arts for years, Jeet Kune Do and Taekwondo. One of the first lessons I would ever teach a new student is, I'm not teaching you to fight. I'm teaching you how to not fight. There's a way to not fight. It doesn't matter if somebody calls me every name in the book. Is that hurting you? Now I'm not saying I always obeyed my own teaching, but because sometimes words get under your skin a little. I'm not going to say it doesn't, but a word never really hurt anybody. The only time that they can really hurt us is when we give them power. So hopefully we're growing in our faith far enough that our frequency is becoming more like God's. And words that have no power should not have power over us, because we're above them.
And I guess in that context, you're just talking about people that really don't have an impact on our life, because we never downplay the power of words of life or death being in our tongue.
100%.
For any people within our, that are meaningful to us, the things that we can either lift up or destroy our children, for example. But, so if we're talking about just the sword application in the world, I don't care that, Joe Blow, atheist guy over here, calls me everything under the sun, because truly that isn't going to be damaging to me.
It doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
Now, if Chris,
torn down by another brother.
If Chris
or a father
and David
or
and
brother
Ryan
or
and
something
Steve all turned their backs on me, and James, he's just sorry, I'll hit the crick. That might hurt me a little bit.
It hurt pretty bad.
Yeah, it'd sting.
Yeah, it'd be more than sting.
Yeah.
That'd cut you down. Cool.
It would. But so I'm not saying that words have no power, but
I know you're not. I was just giving clarification.
Those words that are spoken from the enemy should never have a moment's worth of power over us. So, and we have to know where those words are coming from too, because sometimes the enemy's using our wife, they're using our kids, they're using us sometimes, and we need to. How many times have you?
That's where all this division comes from.
How many times have you? We're supposed to close in 20 minutes.
Hey, we're just now getting
How many times have you done something that you knew better than to do, and then as soon as you did it, you're like, "Man, you're so stupid. You're just an idiot. I can't believe you're that retarded."
I can't count that.
I mean, I've said that to myself. Well, maybe not million.
Well, we screw it up and then we start to self-hate talk, which is another screw up. So it's like we
is.
find ourselves.
It's the enemy using our own words.
You're stupid. You're stupid. Stupid.
So the one thing I know about everybody in our atmosphere right now, I don't think that there's a stupid person among us.
No.
Everybody is. Intelligent.
Our basket of facts are pretty full.
Our basket of facts are pretty full. I hope that our basket of character is catching up.
Yes.
That's just for our brother Steve.
Just for our brother Steve, since he wasn't here today. So, character, basket of facts, basket of character. I hope our basket of character outweighs our basket of facts.
Absolutely.
I love people where they're at. I don't know how to not love them where they're at, but in doing so, you have to know that is a treacherous journey. And I don't suggest that for most people. For most people, I say keep everybody at arm's length and only allow them when they've proven themselves to be accountable. But then James says here, "Come on in."
And me, I'll go to them.
It's what
And
Yahweh.
they have to be careful.
It's what Yahweh does, though, with us, I think. So we have to we have to guard what the Father has entrusted us with. And when we start hearing those words of hate speech, whether it's coming from our wife, whether it's coming from our children, whether it's coming from ourselves, or whether it's coming from a literal enemy, we have to not allow those words to affect us. We have to say, okay, when it's coming from ourselves, we have to literally have to say to ourselves, those are not my words, those are not my thoughts. I'm not dumb, I'm not stupid, I'm not an idiot, I'm not these things that my brain is telling me I am, because that's the enemy trying to bring your frequency down, because if he can bring your frequency down to his level, then he can attack you. But if your frequency is above his level, he can't attack you, can't
I
reach.
just experienced this yesterday.
So it's just a major thing. If the more I'm understanding frequency and God speaking everything into existence, the more that stuff is becoming a reality to me. But then if you take it too far, then you can get on the demonic side of it. Now you're using mind power, and that's a rabbit hole you don't want to go down.
Energy
I mean,
codes and
yeah.
everything else.
Well, I mean, I don't even teaching martial arts when I wasn't a believer. There's a thing called chi, and it's a real power. I mean, it's a legitimate power that I used to teach people, and I'm ashamed to say I did.
Bruce Lee talked about it a lot.
Yeah, it's it is. And it's easy to yield yourself over to it is the problem. And so when we start realizing that there's legitimate power on the other side of God, and it's easy to access. Well, most people want to gravitate towards that.
Everybody wants it easy.
Everybody wants easy, but I wrote a little article this week, and I'm like, it's hard to be financially disciplined. It's harder to be in debt.
Yeah.
It's hard to get up every morning and work out. It's harder to be obese. I mean, all of those, everything is hard. You just have to choose your hard. What hard do you want? Do you want to be disciplined and have less hard? Because it's less hard to be disciplined and work out every day than it is to be obese and trying to get the weight off. I'll tell you, I mean, I got to be 75 pounds overweight. It was difficult. I've been financially in debt. It was difficult getting out of debt. A lot more difficult than it would have been staying out of debt.
Absolutely.
So when you start realizing you have to choose your hard, it's easy to go for the world, is what it seems like. You're going for Satan, but that's really the hard thing, because it's so much harder to let go of that stuff and come to God. Because that road ends in destruction. This road ends in eternal life. So let's keep our frequencies high. You have anything else on that, Ryan, before we burn rubber out of here?
No, well, just bouncing off what you said about the frequencies. I think the Father is shining light on His people, and I think He is raising our vibrations. And
Absolutely.
And I think when we raise our vibrations, that the enemy can't go to that place, and I think you're going to start seeing a separation, in this world, where maybe we just leave the evildoers to their demise, and raises us to our vibrations, raises us to the light, where the enemy doesn't even affect us anymore, if that even makes sense. But it kind of feels like that's what's happened.
I think you're right. And when we start, you use the word vibrating. That vibrating frequency is that word there in Genesis 1, where it says, "And He moved upon the water." If you look at the definition of that word, it means to vibrate or to flutter. Okay, so it was literally a vibration interacting with water, which we know that's what frequency does. Frequency, if you put frequency in water, it creates these beautiful Mandela effects and that type of thing.
There's some pretty cool videos of that.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. It's like these are magnets here, and if you put them together, they'll bounce together for just a split second. They don't just immediately attach. They go, before they seed on each other.
For the frequency.
Because they have their frequencies are attracted to each other this way. Their frequencies are repelled from each other this way. So here, if I put that magnet there, it's repelled. If I turn it over, then they're attracted. So pretty good lesson on frequency because that vibration. Magnets, especially if you look at magnets, the polarities of magnets, because magnets are combined with, let's say one's going clockwise, one's going counterclockwise, and they're combined with both of them spinning at the same time. So those frequencies are fighting against each other. So if you put a negative and a positive together, they stick to each other. If you put them against each other, they repel each other. So that's the thing about y'all as children. We are, even though we're drawn to evil because sin entered into our body, it's never going to attract us because our attracted is Yahweh because we belong to Him. So we need to vibrate on His frequency. All right. With that said, we love you guys, but not as much as Yahweh does. Anybody else got anything to say?
Bye.
All right.
Shabbat
We'll
shalom.
see you next time on the Tents of Israel. Shabbat Shalom.
Love y'all.
Let me see if I can kill the live feed.